Here you come again, and you say that you're my friend, but I know why you're here. She wants to know how I feel. Tell her that I'm happy. Tell her that I'm gay. Tell her I wouldn't have it any other way.
Hello, and welcome to The ShakeUp. This is a show that explores and honors the LGBTQ+ history of Windsor-Essex. My name is Emerson McIntosh, and I would like to start by acknowledging and honoring the history of this land. This area is the traditional land of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi, the nations that comprise the Three Fires Confederacy, also known as the Council of Three Fires. I would like to acknowledge as well the spiritual and physical connection that these nations have to this land, and the ways in which they have been dispossessed of this land through the processes of colonialism. To acknowledge as a settler my responsibility to act to respect treaty relationships, which in this area includes the McKee Treaty in Session 66, and to work to address the harm caused by the colonial government through untrustworthy, dishonest actions. OPIRG, which stands for the Ontario Public Interest Research Group, of which there are 11 public interest research groups across Ontario, furthers the cause of social and environmental justice. OPIRG is funded through full-time undergraduate and graduate students. OPIRG Windsor was re-established in 1994, and they've been working toward justice here for over 20 years. On a personal note, I encountered OPIRG first when I met out on campus at the university, which was supported and kept alive by the efforts of OPIRG. Out on campus was the LGBTQ+ community group at UWindsor, and the predecessor to today's Campus Pride. OPIRG is currently located in Dillon Hall 252, and like many student-based groups has been threatened by the Student Choice Initiative. Consider opting into funding as a way of keeping social justice on the forefront at UWindsor. Hi, this is Emerson, and I'm here today with my co-host, DJ Dave Squeaky Wheels.
Yeah, it was half right. It's okay. It all depends on the floor's density and liquidation, but go ahead.
And we're interviewing Jim Monk. I wanted to speak with you today about all the different activism you've done, beginning with the Windsor LG phone line.
Well, it was a pretty open invitation for anybody who had questions about homosexuality, the gay community, to give us a call. So it wasn't, in the beginning, it wasn't a helpline, it was an information service. And we did describe where the gay bars were, what the activities were going on that the local organization was doing. A lot of what we did was talking about what was going on in Detroit and Ann Arbor and a few other close places. And from time to time we would get people who were going through some serious emotional issues and things like that. So increasingly we had to have more training and more due diligence and being careful in how we treated people who were in crisis. So that was always an issue, whether we were, sort of a political advocacy group or whether we were a self-help group. And in the end, it turned out to be a bit of both. And depending on the volunteers, and there were many, probably 20, 30 people over the course of a decade would take shifts, usually from like 7, 8 o'clock in the evening till maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Not every day, but sometimes we tried to fill up. We had enough people who were interested in it. People would come in throughout the week, but we tried to do, especially on Thursdays and Fridays. Didn't do the weekends. We began hosting a series of dances in a local union hall, IBEW, and they became very, very successful with sometimes hundreds of people coming, and from quite a large, we got people from Chatham, people from parts of Michigan, and a fairly large segment of the Windsor population coming as well. We made a lot of money, so we ended up renting a small apartment in a building downtown Windsor, right across from Victoria Park Place, condos. So, and that's where we put the phone line. That's where we had the volunteers going. After a while, as more gay bars opened up, the dances we were putting on as a fundraiser became more difficult because we had lots of competition, and then the insurance problem developed where the local union hall had to really increase what they were charging us for rent to cover liability issues. So eventually we stopped holding the dances, which meant we couldn't afford the apartment anymore. And at that point, people would start hosting it in their homes, and moved from several different places. It was in my house for a while. It was in several other people's. Ended up Frank Butler's place down over on Glengarry, which was where it was for a number of years. And so volunteers would come. We try to get 2 people per shift. And, if possible, man and a woman. Not always possible, and not always possible to get 2 people, but that was our goal. And we would get together once a month or so and discuss the kind of questions we were getting, the kind of issues that people had. So it went on off and on, like I say, for about 10 years or so.
So it sounds kind of like I guess as a millennial, I have to say, in the absence of Google, the way that you would find information was you would call the phone line or you would come talk to people. Like, is that?
Yeah, or, there were some periodicals where we could put ads in. We tried running ads in the Windsor Star and had they refused to run one of our ads for the gay dance, and we made a complaint to the press council about that. And as it happened, I was on the press council as the youth rep.
Came full circle then.
Yeah. And
I was gonna say,
could have been my suggestion that we do that, but anyway. And Steve Lowe and a couple of other people went and made the presentation, and we won at that level. And eventually, the Star started printing our ads and personal classifieds and things like that. But we were also there were these counterculture mags coming out of Detroit, and we were, in there as well. So there's people found out. You go to a gay bar, we'd leaflet it, so people would know about that, just like we used to for the dances. We got some press for various things we did. The group was hosting. No, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is more early '80s, but we did do some things where we got mentioned in the media, and that raised the issue. We got a lot of help from CKWW and CJOM way back then, where they would interview us for little 5-minute clips on the news and stuff like that from time to time.
What was CJOM?
CJAM.
Yeah, so that's where this name kind of comes from.
We replaced a different vowel. That's all.
Yeah, and they were an FM progressive rock thing that came in 69, 70. There was it was what's now CKWW, CKWW FM, those stations. But so yeah, and it was the most powerful rock station in the area. I think we had and it was on top of the Viscount Motel down on Olette Avenue, which used to be this 23-story building with CKWW on top, and the FM studios as well. And back when I was in high school, actually, myself and another guy, we got a summer job there doing the news for the FM. So we got in good with the station manager back then.
That actually leads me to my next question. What was the coverage like? Like, what was the public's reception to your services that you're providing? Because obviously now we're living in an age where information can be exchanged a little bit easier and people have more of the exposure. People who are, I guess, different in their lives. Like, what was that like?
Well, we certainly got some flack from particularly religious programming on some radio stations, and certainly our organization came up for mention in Sunday sermons from time to time, and it would happen that we'd have friends or actually members of the community in those churches when that was happening, so we would find out about them, and from time to time we'd go and sort of confront them and saying, why do you preach this particular severe story about us in the way that you do? And sometimes that had an ameliorating effect. Sometimes it just upped the ante a bit more.
Makes for a fun mixer the next day.
Yeah. This was all, again, happening in the context of the 70s. And again, there was a strong gay movement developing in Detroit as well. So these stories were never really that far from the news.
We'll be right back after these messages with more of the ShakeUp.
Attention Windsor and Detroit musicians, CJAM wants you. Every month, CJAM creates a local singles compilation exclusively for programmer use. At the end of each month, we tally up the plays and make a chart of the top local tunes. Join the CJAMFM Singles Club today and get your music on the radio. Submit your fresh new tracks to cjammd@gmail.com with the subject line Singles Club. You could find yourself at the top of CJAM's monthly local chart. The CJAM Singles Club is just another way we're reaching higher ground in Windsor and Detroit. Find out more information at cjam.ca.
That was Hologram from Taco Cat from their album This Mess is a Place. Now back to the Shake-Up. Speaking of radio, could you tell me about Closets Are for Clothes, which I wasn't able to find a year for starting that, but I believe it was like late 70s. What was the theme of the show?
I'm now thinking it was a bit into the 80s, only because the theme music of the show was Blue Monday by New Order, and I think that came out in 1983. So it was right after CJAM got their broadcast radio license. So I heard about that, and I saw some stuff about them wanting to do community shows. It was part of their mandate. So I came in and made a proposal, and it was accepted.
Did the term mandate scare them? You know what I'm saying? Because it's in the name, mandate, so it's already...
Oh, well, there was a fair amount of discussion, and people, I heard about it. I wasn't there for the discussion, but, within a week or two, I got it. Come on in. We'll set you up. So Fraser was the production manager at the time, and he's the guy who suggested Blue Monday. And it went on for a number of years. I think until, I'm just guessing, around 1990 or so. I gave all my stuff away to archives in Toronto, including many of my notes, which I wish I had with me today. Yeah, so we began with a weekly, hourly show discussion, and I would usually have a co-host, and Mike was with me, and Kevin. Kathy came on after a while. Sometimes I wouldn't be able to make it, and people would step in and do the show. So it was usually a combination of live things plus interviews that we recorded. We became part of a gay radio network across the U.S. and Canada, so we'd be exchanging tapes of programs and interviews. And so that was a nice thing, to be able to play somebody else's work. I would go,
There's only so much Elton John you can play.
Summer,
right?
Exactly, right. So, we kept it up for quite a while. The name Closets Are for Clothes was suggested by Bentley, who was a member of the gay youth group, which met in another union hall, the QP, Outside Workers Hall, down on Tecumseh Road. Again, that was late 70s, early 80s that they were going. And when we started up the radio show, I put out feeling, what do we call this thing? And that was the top suggestion. Everybody really liked it.
Could you tell me more about the Gay Radio Network? Like, when did that start? Did it have a formal title?
It did, and it was basically, they were shipping tapes around, big reel-to-reel tapes, like, 8 inches or so. It wasn't on cassettes till later. And so when we'd be splicing with the razor blade to put the interviews, that's how you'd edit your tapes. None of this digital stuff. It was very analog.
Hands-on.
I'm imagining doing that for this show, and it's
right?
staggering.
Can't really cut my USB the same way.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you had a real interest in radio, like a long interest in radio. I was wondering if there was a specific inspiration to host this radio show.
No, just that I had done it back in high school, and so I was pretty familiar with it. We had a high school citywide student newspaper that was unofficial. It was not sanctioned by the Board of Education, but we had a pretty big circulation. And I was president of the Student Council Federation for the city at the time. So we had a setup again where we were doing this, producing a newspaper for all the high schools, so now I've lost track of where I'm going with that. But
that's okay.
yeah, so we did stuff there, and the people at CKWW had us coming in and doing these youth-oriented, high school-oriented shows every weekend. I got to interview Alice Cooper at one of them.
Oh, really?
And,
What?
Before you were 18, ironically.
That's right. I was 16.
Oh, there you
16.
go.
Owen was 16 or 15. Owen went on to become an editor at the Windsor Star. Yeah, and he was there to talk to the FM guys. And he just walked by and said, "What are you doing in here?" I didn't know who it was at first. So anyway, so yeah, I had a bit of hands-on experience with that. So this seemed like a natural. We were doing all these other things.
What stood out to you like the most? Was there a story that, or like a person that kind of made you realize like, oh, this is why I'm doing this to help people? I'm like, if there's something that stood out to you.
In terms of building the lesbian gay community at the time, I think the biggest thing that we accomplished was a conference for the entire province in association with the Coalition for Lesbian and Gay Rights in Ontario. And so we held that at St. Clair College, and we had to get a lot of volunteers from across Windsor and Essex County to help pull that off. And we got those people. People were really excited. They came to the conference sessions. They were helping with preparing the food. They were helping with billeting people. We put people up from Ottawa, Thunder Bay, all the way around. We were doing a part of a campaign to get the Ontario Human Rights Code amended to include sexual orientation, and so that's what the Provincial Coalition was all about. The theme of our conference was never going back into the closet. And as people still tell me today across the province how fond memories they have of the recreational things. We had friends out in the county put on a huge bonfire barbecue, and we had a dance associated with it as well. We had all kinds of things going on, and so we had resources that we didn't know until we went to call upon them.
Yeah.
People came forward. A lot of people that was their first involvement. They heard about this. Again, the radio show was very, very useful because we did reach a lot of people that way. So that's the people say, yeah, I heard about the radio show, and then they called the phone line, because we were pushing the phone line number and things like that.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people probably didn't understand or didn't realize there was all this access and there was this community that they're missing out on. To me, that must have been enormous for you guys.
At the same time, we went from having very little in the way of commercial gay and lesbian venues. The first bar in Windsor that everybody went to was the West Side, and at that point it was basically a women's bar. And once our meetings started happening with Windsor Gay Unity, we'd often go to the West Side afterwards, where we'd meet a bunch of lesbians, and who it was their bar. Made quite clear to us that we were tolerated, and we were sort of like allowed to become part of it. Then at one point, Windsor started getting more gay bars and things like that. So the people going to the commercial points also got leaflets and also heard about what we were doing. We would also put on activities in the bars, so that became a contact as well, and there became a pretty good synergy between the commercial interests and the political activists.
Well, yeah, because they realize there's a community, and with a community means money and influence.
We did a lot of advertising in the Detroit bars because most people in Windsor went to Detroit. So a lot of times they'd see our flyers or stuff like that, and they'd find out, okay, these guys are doing dances, they've got a thing. Occasionally issues would come up. We had a situation where a bunch of men were arrested because of cruising that was going on in a section of Jackson Park near the overpass, and they were sending in undercover cops and waiting for the people who were cruising to touch them, and then charging them with sexual assault.
So it was like entrapment almost.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And and we kind of went ballistic on that. I was interviewed in the Windsor Star, and we managed to get almost all of them, with the exception of the first couple of people, to plead not guilty. And then we got a favorable ruling in court that, in fact, this activity was taking place not in Jackson Park, but across the railway tracks, which was private property, and CNC, the National Canadian Pacific, wasn't complaining. Didn't want to deal with it, but so the judge threw him out, and we basically got almost all of these people out of having an uncomfortable arrest record.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that especially when we see history repeating itself and people being arrested for cruising again 2 years ago, it's important to recognize that is not okay.
Oh yeah, and like it's still going on in other parts of the world. That's what I think. You're talking about millennials. I think that we have the access to information now, so it's kind of more apparent than it used to be. But in other countries, if you even mention that or even allude to that, it's same type of entrapment, and not necessarily the same type of leeway. So yeah, it's very important to have organizations and people like you, Mr. Monk.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today. Is there anything you would like people to check out after they hear this episode?
I can't. There's just so much out there now. We just had a great week. So, pride continues to move on. So I've been at this, 40 years. I'm basically retired as an activist now, but I'm just really happy to see what the other younger generations are doing.
They've definitely picked up the mantle, I'd say.
Yes.
Yes. So we appreciate you coming on, Mr. Monk. We really do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The ShakeUp. For more LGBTQ plus history of Windsor-Essex, catch us every Friday at 4 p.m. on CJAM 99.1 FM. You can also catch us online on YouTube at ShakeUp Radio. Interested in appearing on the show or want to volunteer, please email us at shakeup@opirgwindsor.org. That's SHAKEUP @OPIRGWindsor.org. Thank you so much for listening to the show. See you next week.
That's all I got to say, my friend. Now we better say goodbye. I think you'd better go right now, or you might see me cry. But when you see my baby,